You have buried someone before, or you will. A funeral, a grave, flowers laid down, words spoken over a body that can no longer hear them. It feels obvious to you, almost automatic, like something every human has simply always done. But here is the strange part. For most of human history, this was not obvious at all. Death was not always something you marked. It was something that happened and was left behind, the way a fallen tree is left in a forest. So when did that change? When did your ancestors first decide that a dead body deserved more than abandonment? The answer is far stranger and far older than most people realize. Around 100,000 years ago, something shifted inside the minds of early humans living in what is now Israel. At a site called Qafzeh Cave, archaeologists uncovered a burial unlike anything found before it. A human skeleton deliberately placed in a shallow pit, with the antlers of a deer positioned carefully across the chest. Think about what that means. Someone took the time. Someone chose the antlers. Someone decided this body, this particular person, mattered enough to mark. Paleoanthropologist Ian Tattersall has spent decades studying exactly this question. What makes a burial rather than just disposal? His answer is simple and unsettling. Intention. The moment a body is placed with care, with objects, with apparent meaning, you are no longer looking at biology. You are looking at the first flicker of something we would recognize as culture. And once that flicker appeared, it never went away. Move forward in time to around 60,000 years ago, to a cave in what is now Iraq called Shanidar. Here, researchers found something even more startling. Pollen. Clusters of ancient flower pollen, concentrated suspiciously around a buried Neanderthal skeleton. For decades, this was interpreted as proof that even Neanderthals, often dismissed as primitive cousins of modern humans, buried their dead with flowers. A funeral with bouquets? 60,000 years before your time. That theory has been challenged since. Some researchers now argue the pollen may have been carried in by burrowing rodents, not mourners. Science does this. It revises itself. But here is what nobody disputes. The skeleton itself, called Shanidar 4, was deliberately positioned in a deliberate pit by deliberate hands. Something or someone decided this mattered. Pollen or not, the body was not abandoned. Why does this matter to you sitting here, thousands of generations later? Because somewhere in that decision, you can trace the beginning of an idea that still governs your life. The idea that a person does not simply stop existing the moment their heart stops. That something about them, memory, meaning, presence, deserves to continue. Anthropologist Pascal Boyer has spent his career studying why nearly every human culture, separated by oceans, time, and language, independently developed rituals around death. His research suggests something uncomfortable. Your brain may be incapable of fully processing a person as gone. You have spent your entire life building a mental model of the people you know, their voice, their habits, the way they walk into a room. That model does not simply delete itself the instant someone dies. It lingers. It runs in the background, expecting them to call, expecting them to walk through the door. Burial, in this light, was never really about the body. It was about the mind of the person left behind, a way of giving the living somewhere to put a presence that refuses to disappear. Consider what archaeologists found at Sungir in modern-day Russia, dating back roughly 34,000 years. 2 children, buried head-to-head, covered in thousands of meticulously carved ivory beads. Each bead would have taken hours to make. Thousands of hours for 2 children who had already died. Why would a group with limited time, limited food, limited everything, spend that much labor on people who could no longer benefit from it? Archaeologist Randall White, who has studied the Sungir burials extensively, argues this is exactly the point. The labor was never for the dead. It was a message to the living, a demonstration that even when someone is gone, the group will not simply move on as if nothing happened. That instinct, the refusal to simply move on, is still inside you. You feel it when you visit a grave you have never seen before and instinctively lower your voice. You feel it when you scroll past an old photo of someone who has died and your chest tightens for half a second before you can explain why. You did not learn that reaction. It was already there, waiting. There is something else hiding in these ancient burials, something psychologists are only beginning to fully understand. Terror management theory, developed by psychologists Sheldon Solomon, Jeff Greenberg, and Tom Pischinsky, argues that human beings are the only species fully aware that death is coming for them personally, not abstractly, specifically. You know, right now, reading this, that one day you will not exist. Their research found that this awareness, left unmanaged, would be paralyzing. So human minds developed buffers. Culture, religion, ritual, burial. Anything that allows you to believe, even briefly, that something about you continues. The ancient humans at Qafzeh, at Shanidar, at Sungir were not just mourning. They were building the earliest version of a psychological survival tool, a way to look directly at death without collapsing under the weight of it. You inherited that tool. You use it constantly, whether you notice or not. Every time you say someone lives on in their work, their children, their memory, you are using language built by people who buried bodies with deer antlers and ivory beads 100,000 years ago. Every gravestone, every memorial bench, every photograph kept on a shelf is a direct descendant of that first deliberate burial in a cave in Israel. Here is the detail that should unsettle you the most. Researchers studying these ancient burial sites have found something consistent across nearly every culture, every continent, every era. The dead are almost never buried facing randomly. They are oriented toward the rising sun, toward sacred landmarks, toward something. Archaeologist Mike Parker Pearson, who has studied burial orientation across multiple continents, suggests this reflects something deeper than coincidence. Early humans were not simply disposing of bodies in convenient directions, they were positioning the dead as if direction itself mattered, as if death had an address, a place it was pointed toward. You may never have buried anyone facing east, but you have lit a candle for someone. You have spoken to a photograph. You have visited a grave and said something out loud, fully aware that no one could hear you, and done it anyway. That is not irrational. That is 100,000 years of inherited behavior surfacing in you without your permission. The strangest part of all this is not that ancient humans buried their dead. Animals occasionally do something resembling that too. Elephants linger near the bones of their herd. Chimpanzees have been observed sitting beside dead group members for hours. The strange part is that early humans began to add meaning, objects, position, care. They turned a biological fact, death, into a cultural act, mourning. And once that transition happened, it could never be undone. You are not capable of seeing death as simply biological anymore, even if you wanted to. Somewhere in your evolutionary inheritance, a switch was flipped 100,000 years ago, and it has stayed flipped in every human born since. So the next time you stand at a funeral, or lay flowers somewhere, or simply think quietly about someone who is gone, understand what you are actually doing. You are not performing an empty social custom. You are continuing the oldest unbroken tradition your species has ever practiced. Older than language as we know it. Older than agriculture. Older than almost everything you would call civilization. You have buried someone before, or you will. And when you do, you will be doing exactly what a small group of humans did in a cave in Israel 100,000 years ago, when they looked at a body and decided, for reasons they likely could not have explained, that it deserved to be remembered. There is one more layer to this story worth sitting with. Archaeologist Paul Pettit, who has spent years tracing the evolution of burial practices, points out something easy to miss. The earliest burials were not elaborate. They were simple pits, simple gestures, a body curled into a fetal position, sometimes nothing more. The elaborate beadwork at Sungir, the careful antler placement at Qafzeh, came later. Burial did not begin as art. It began as something closer to instinct, a refusal, almost involuntary, to simply walk away. That distinction matters. It suggests the impulse to mark death came before the ability to elaborate on it. The feeling arrived first. The ritual came after, built slowly on top of something that was already there. This is, in a strange way, comforting. It means the urge you feel at a funeral, the tightness in your chest, The instinct to say something even when there is no one left to hear it is not a learned performance you picked up from watching others. It runs deeper than culture. It is closer to the root of what makes you human in the first place. Psychologist Ernest Becker, writing decades before terror management theory existed in its modern form, argued that nearly all human achievement, art, religion, ambition, the desire to build something that outlasts you, is in some sense a response to the awareness of death. Becker called this the denial of death, though denial is perhaps the wrong word. It was never really about pretending death does not happen. It was about refusing to let it be the final word. That refusal built cathedrals. It built languages, recorded in writing precisely so something could survive the person who spoke it. It built the entire concept of legacy. And it began, as far as anyone has been able to trace it, with a handful of early humans in a handful of caves, who looked at the people they had lost and decided, against every practical instinct that says move on, conserve energy, survive, that this person deserved one more act of attention. You carry that decision forward every single day, usually without noticing. The fact that you flinch slightly at the word forever. The fact that you keep old voicemails you will probably never listen to again. The fact that certain anniversaries arrive each year and something in you quietly notices, even when you have not consciously marked the date on a calendar. None of that is irrational. None of that is sentimentality layered on top of biology. It is the original software, the same software that placed deer antlers across a chest in a cave in Israel 100,000 years ago, still running, quietly, underneath everything you think of as simply being you. You have buried someone before, or you will. And in that moment, you will not be inventing something new. You will be joining a line of humans stretching back further than memory itself, all of whom looked at the same impossible fact, and all of whom, in their own way, refused to let it be the end of the story.